Greetings and welcome to the KneoMedia Limited conference. It is now my pleasure to introduce your host, Executive Chairman James Kellett. Thank you, Mr. Kellett. You may begin.
Thank you very much, Paul. And first of all, may I start by thanking all the attendees of this conference. I had the pleasure of attending a real conference last year in Las Vegas with SNN, and now we're reduced, but fortunately, to a virtual conference. Just a little bit of background, I'm actually in Melbourne, Australia. We've got into a similar situation. We have an 8 p.m. curfew, a total lockdown, and can't leave home. So I do very much sympathise with all the good folk of the USA that are struggling through this situation. So we do very much relate to what you're going through. As we go through the presentation, I will make reference to COVID and the effect it's having. I want to stress very much at the outset that this is not a company pivoting on the opportunity that COVID presents. This is a company that was actually well established long before COVID, and it's a company that's actually providing a solution that to the issues that COVID has presented, and will continue to provide a solution for education, to engage, educate and assess students long after COVID leaves us, which I'm sure it shall. We share in Australia the burden that you folks in the US are sharing. But having said that, let me move on with my presentation. I'm not going to read verbatim the slides that I'm going to show you. I'm going to talk to you about our business and what we do. We know our business intimately, and our business, I must say, first of all, is very much US focused. The business was launched originally in the US, whilst we must be an Australian company. Our business was first launched in the US. It's been developed in the US. It's been developed in conjunction with US educators. It's been developed with US universities. And we've spent 6 years and a lot of money producing a platform that works with elementary students. We all know that remote learning for higher education, universities, has been around for a long time. But the big gap that's been experienced and evidenced more recently has been in the elementary, the junior grades. So as I quickly run through my presentation slide, there's one thing I'd like to point out to you that we're quite proud of. Whilst we're ASX listed in Australia, the Australian Securities Exchange, we are indeed OTCQB registered, and we are DTC eligible, so we're fully tradable on online platforms, and shares can be readily purchased and traded within the US market without the limitations of having to address Australian accounts, and we're quite proud of that achievement. It took us 12 months to get there. So that's the financial aspect. Let's move into the presentation. We've got a lot to cover, and I've got a short amount of time to do it. So if I quickly run through the opportunity, our mission is to provide world-class, high-end e-learning product to service significant growth and demand within US education. I stress again that we are a US-focused business. We founded our business in the US, and we continue to work in the US. As I said earlier, COVID-19 has expedited the need for rapid transition for younger students to access remote and engaged e-learning platform, and we're able to provide that. We are a SaaS-based e-learning provider, and we cater for 100% of the US education market, K-8, which includes both general and special needs. We've spent 6 years on a journey of developing our platform, which has included integration with universities, federal, national, state, local education departments. We've created a vast library of content which caters for all of those various aspects of education, and we have powerful tools to help students succeed in the class, at home, and provide assessment progression for educators online or in the classroom. And I stress online remote learning. We continually release new lessons, refresh content, new curriculum, and the IP is totally ours. We don't license other people's products. We totally create our own products. One of the most important things about our business and our path forward is we have an incredible collaboration with Dell Technologies and the NAACP. And we've proven that platform in New York City in creating an opportunity for provision of both technology, connectivity, and also software for online learning. And I shall talk about that as we go through. This is a summary of what of really my whole presentation. Just briefly, the US market is about 40 million K-8 public and private school students, and we indeed deal with both public and private school students. One of the most important things, I think, for any investor in the US looking at an Australian listed company on the ASX today is we are actually DTC eligible, and we're incredibly undervalued at a market cap of under $20 million. But DTC eligible, as I'm sure my audience would understand, is quite significant because you can trade with your online platforms. And it's not creating new shares, it's simply moving shares between the ASX register and shares back to our US register. If I move to the next slide, and I said to you earlier, we're not pivoting on COVID-19. We're well prepared for home learning, but COVID-19 has certainly dramatically changed education globally. It's presented enormous challenges for both teachers and students, and many teachers we've seen have inexperience in providing remote home learning to students, and students are reluctant to engage at home. I think that if any of our audience have young students, they will know that the educators that they've tried to do Zoom conferences with will have seen the shortcomings in the presentations. We actually have, and I'll go into that further as we move on, we actually have a solution that both engages the students and provides the educators with a clear pathway to provide lessons, to assess the performance, and to adjust what the students need to go forward with a constant engagement under our SaaS platform. One of the most important things is that we've built is a content management system. Everything we have is, by the way, our own IP. It's our own intellectual property. So our content management system allows us to create highly engaging, story-based e-learning lessons that teachers can deploy directly to students at home. They can target the students, send them what they need, give them a task, and as you'll see when I move on to the more exciting part of the presentation, the reason why we're able to engage students with our anime art and our characters, our NeoWorld characters that take students into an incredible learning space where they're participating in learning, at the same time they're enjoying the journey. Remotely, because of our SaaS platform, which is based on AWS hosting, we're able to provide virtual attendance, we're able to provide time on task, progression, and enable teachers to individually curate instruction for students remotely. As I said earlier, we had all this before COVID-19. It now happens to be incredibly relevant to what's occurred, and post-COVID-19, it will continue. I think we'll have a blended situation where we'll still continue to have in-class and out-of-class. The future education market will be fully aware of the benefits of our entrenched system as we go forward. Education will indeed be both in-class and out-of-class, and we're able to cater for that. I just moved to the next slide. I just want to run through our business model. I'll do this quite briefly. I'm aware of the time that we have in this presentation. Having formed the business in the US, we do have a very solid sales team across the US. We have a substantial pipeline. We're catering for special needs. We're catering for English as a second language, general education, and we're addressing a market of up to 40 million students. As I mentioned earlier, we have an NAACP and Dell partnership, which we've developed over the last 18 months, which is quite an extraordinary collaboration. The NAACP education strategy is to extend education well and truly beyond what's being received today. Dell have joined that partnership with us to provide the technology where it's lacking. I should say collaboration rather than partnership, because that's in the US as a legal term. It's very different to what we use in Australia. And we're creating a massive joint opportunities. The NAACP are at the forefront of also alternative funding from many sources, and we're delivering that technology right now into New York City. We've achieved that. We've done that. In terms of funding and product endorsement, we have a very substantial political funding endorsement in New York, both at city and state level and elsewhere, and also corporate funding and assistance to provide our package into education where it's most needed. In Florida, we've had a very successful trials, which has given us an opportunity to access federal funding, albeit we know that the vast majority of education is funded by council and state as opposed to federal funding. The other thing I point out is that everything that we're doing is actually incredibly ethical in the funding, and that's why we're attracting interesting foundations because of the nature of the business that we're doing. I just move up to the other corner of our slide and we look at our content management system. This gives us an incredible versatility to quickly adapt to changing scenarios within the education system. I think that anybody that's involved in education would understand completely that the Common Core state standards are changing state by state. We have a content management system that we manage internally. It's our own IP, and we can quickly pivot to the particular state standards as we've done in the states of Florida, Texas, Illinois, and so forth. It's something that's part of our own IP. Our content management system, which embraces Google Education, also simplifies regional localization, it simplifies written and voice translation, and whilst I'm focusing very much on the US market as I speak to you today, or in my case tonight, it also gives us the ability to move very quickly to translate into other regions where we are actually operating. We also are constantly, from our internal production group, releasing new and refreshed content. The final point on this slide I'd point out to you, we have a very substantial pedagogical validation. We've worked constantly with educators. We have universities. Some of them may not be known to you, but really we're cornering universities across the globe, whether that be in Australia, whether that be in Florida, whether that be in Asia. But we have validation, research, and these programs take up to 12 months to achieve the results they presented to us. I'll just move to the next slide and quickly look at our income model. Our income model is quite simple. It's an annual annuity subscription model of $50 per student within a school. We transacted in the states of New York, Ohio, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Florida, California. I think we can add Illinois to that as well. We've sold to departments of education, school districts, and institutions on a student seat license basis, either directly or via partnerships and distribution agreements. But most importantly, our business is B2B based. We are not a consumer product. We're not an app for parents to play around with and entertain the kids. We're very much an education-driven platform, and it's a B2B basis. An example of that is federal funding in the state of New York, where we work with the Florida A&M University there, and we were able to very quickly establish, by using our platform, a substantial increase in maths and literacy in a 6-week period, which led to further pilots, and so we continue to work with Florida at both a state level and also moving into the districts, and that includes the involvement of the Title IV funding. Just other, as for knowledge, just other areas that we're currently working now, and in states and districts, there's a list there. I don't need to read them out to you, but you can see that they're quite well spread, and every day there's more that are progressing, and they're spread quite across a large number of states. If I just move to the next slide, the differentiators are what we're doing and what we're seeing. We're seeing offerings in the market which are rather templated and are rather basic, but we do provide remedial education and deliver detailed progressive assessment via real-time analytics, so that a teacher is actually looking and can see remotely what a child is doing and what level they're at and how they need to deal with them. We have exceptional levels of education engagement, and I'm looking forward to taking you a few slides down to give you the most important part of our presentation and why the kids engage with us, and I'll go with that at the moment. But we have education, university research-backed metrics on the levels of engagement, which are quite phenomenal because of the way we engage the kids. And we do that by games-based learning, story-based learning, which is the oldest form of learning. Unlike the other single subject products, and I won't go into them, I don't need to name them, but we cover the 6 main areas of curriculum: literacy, numeracy, arts, science, critical thinking, life skills, which also puts us right into the space of the most current form of education, and which is STEM. Call it STEM, call it STEAM, call it STREAM, but we're in the current 21st century skills set. We have a really solid pipeline of opportunities with significant near-term sales, and our remote e-learning COVID-19 work has actually expedited those sales opportunities. Just to reduce that down to what we're actually doing and what NeoWorld can do. NeoWorld's adaptable online format covers all settings. First of all, in class, traditionally, if we've got students in class, we have learning resources. We can deal with whole groups, small groups, individually. These are student-centered and teacher-led. Secondly, we have distance e-learning program, where we have students at home, but we still have a teacher-led environment where we're able to provide the teachers with lesson plans to send to the students that are engaging, and they get the feedback in real time of whether or not the students are engaged and whether or not they are progressing at a certain level, and the teachers can adjust them up and down. Thirdly, we have a homeschool core curriculum program. This is not intended for parents as a plaything. This actually addresses the very real homeschool trained parent education market. And there's many homeschoolers in the US. In fact, the number of something like 650,000 homeschoolers in the US. So the platform does indeed accommodate homeschooling at a, shall I say, a trained homeschooler level. It's probably a slide that I don't enjoy most because I don't like talking about the competition, but I just want to quickly run you through what we see as the competition or the lack thereof, and just to give you some metrics around that. E-learning has been focused on higher education, and we know that universities, high schools, That's all been higher education that's been around for a long time. But the market has been incredibly poorly serviced in the younger school students. There's been traditionally edutainment apps that lack engagement, education assessment, mapped curriculum. None of that's been available in the elementary school level. It's all been directed at the higher school. Our SaaS platform does address the young students. And I think the point that I find most noticeable is that the e-books and e-maths that have become so passé today as their original analog versions with the young digital kids. These young kids have a form of digital engagement that is so vastly different to the form of education they're receiving. And if any of my audience have young kids today, they typically know what the young kids are looking at. And to present them with traditional education or e-books doesn't resonate with them. NeoWorld provides them with an ongoing form of engagement that takes them beyond the very rich digital life that they're actually living today in a very young life. Barriers to entry, time costs money. We've built this over 6 years, and it's got to be research backed. We've undertaken a substantial cost, lengthy period of development and validation with universities. Some of these programs have taken us 12 months for a single university to research our program and provide us with the outcomes, which gratefully we've received as positive. If I talk about competitors and barriers to entry, new competitors will need to deploy that regardless of their internal resources. This is not for a company to choose to decide that they've got. What they need to do is collaborate with educators, pedagogues, universities, and validate their product. We have deployed that time, we have deployed that expense, and we now have a unique relationship, for example, with the NAACP and Dell, that enables us to deliver bundled hardware and software, solve the problems of hotspot Wi-Fi, and most importantly also provide training to school teachers and IT departments to take on our education ecosystem. The most important thing about NeoWorld, when we present that to teachers, it is not a burden, it's an asset. If it was a burden, they would reject it. The teachers are finding that it's actually an asset. It's a way that they can go forward without further work, without further burden. So NeoWorld becomes an asset to a teacher. We've also worked through, and I must say that the US education system has many hurdles in terms of validation, approval, and payment. We have worked through a labyrinth of approvals in not only in New York City, but beyond that in other states. That has been a very, very lengthy project. Any company entering the market, I think, will need to go through it, and it's anybody that's been there will know that it's not an easy task. We've also established very high level of dependable network within the education communities. Let me now move to the NeoWorld platform, which is actually what our business is about. And you can see it quite clearly there. We engage, we educate, and we assess. The engagement of NeoWorld is built around our enemy characters, which there are a large number, and they range across all nations, all creeds, all colours, and they all participate in a journey across the world, in a geographical and a historical journey of the world as it stands. As they progress through their journey, they meet challenges and stories which becomes part of the educational program. The engagement level with this anime art and these characters has been, beyond doubt, has been proven by universities to be quite extraordinary. And that's the success that we've had. Once we've engaged the students, we can then educate the students. If they're engaged, they're enjoying what they're doing, then we can educate them. And through their journeys, they participate in challenges which we can test pre and post-test, whether that be math, literacy, whatever. We have the range of subjects that we can do that. So we have research and evidence-based education evaluation, and we've mapped globally to curriculum and assessment. The interesting thing is that curriculum right throughout the Western world countries is, it may go by different names, but universities collaborate at the highest level, and as a consequence, curriculum is very much similar through all the Western world and also most of Asia. They might have different tags and different names, but we're able, through our content management system that I mentioned earlier, to tag those specific markers and provide and align with the curriculum standards of each particular region. Most importantly, and the last point, is assessment. Once the kids are going through real time or afterwards, we've got our proprietary tracking systems where we can analyse what the students have been doing. The educators can look what the students have been doing. They can move them up a grade, down a grade, whether it be by subject or whether it be by grade. They can move them around within the platform individually to give a personalised experience and education program to that child. And as I move forward, you will now see our group of characters, our Neo Explorers. Just to give you a glimpse of our characters who are of the world. We also have the NeoWorld Rubric, which aligns with 99% of education systems around the world. And as it simply says, students immerse themselves and are able to recognise and bond with NeoWorld characters during the learning process. These characters actually take the students on their journey, and along the way, they meet the challenges, they undergo the educational processes, tasks and challenges, and from that, we're able to extract the data and migrate them up to further classes as they progress. But the engagement with the students is the most important part, and all this artwork and these students are, of course, our proprietary IP. Within the platform, we also provide for the educators a very clear and precise education program. So if they're to embark upon a journey with our Neo Explorers that I just showed you, we also provide them with a lesson plan so that the educator in the classroom knows, well, this is the journey the Neo Explorers are going on, and this is the program that I am going to present to the student. And they can do that day after day. These are the same sorts of programs that we are able to project for remote learning when the students are at home, so that the educator is not sitting there wondering what they're going to do and send to the kids and what are they going to do. They can actually transmit these through the platform to the students at home and say, this is the work today, this is the plan, this is what I'm going to do. And then they get, of course, once they've participated, they get time on task, how they've, what level they've reached, and what the educator thinks they should do, relying upon the skill of the educator, which of course they all have, to move them up or down or rework the piece of work that they've just done. But we've hundreds of these lesson plans included in the platform. It's a very, very vast platform. And these lesson plans have been written by curriculum experts, overseen by our own Director of Curriculum, Dr. Jemison. I talked about the analytics, and I won't dwell on these, but this is what an educator can see what their students are doing. They can see time on task. They can quickly see the the graph of where their weaknesses are, where the positives are, and they can see day by day, time on task, subject by subject. I won't dwell on this, but it's pretty obvious that the sort of research that they're getting back from the student, and it's very quick that they can look and see, okay, there's a weakness, we need to put them onto a further program within that, and they can do that within NeoWorld. I think if we just move now back to a commercial level of what we're doing within the platform, if I talk now to investors and we talk about our goals, we're obviously about building shareholder value and recurring revenue based on our 4 pillars, and they're pretty straightforward. Partnerships to facilitate access to government and private enterprise and funding channels. If you look at our team very shortly, I'll put up the slide, you'll see that we have some fabulous partners that are working with us. We've got leading technology, state-of-the-art technology. We're validated globally by recognized bodies and universities. And we're now, as we grow, we're recruiting top talent within our organization. And that's the most exciting part. The hardest part, I think, and I said last year, is starting off is how do you recruit top talent? As a smaller company, we are recruiting top talent, and that for me is incredibly satisfying. I won't read out Dr. Sashin's critique. You can read that for yourselves. You just need to look at her Cleveland Metropolitan School District director. A wonderful reference. Just to quickly run through the board of people who we've got across the top. I'll talk to you very quickly about the people of importance that relate to the US market. Frank Lieberman, who's born and bred our New York executive director, very much involved with the NAACP and Dell and has driven that organisation. Anthony St. John, who runs our UK operation. Lewis Diggs, who's our sales director in the US, many, many years of experience in education. Damien O'Sullivan, who's spent his life between education and EdTech technology. Dr. Janine Jimison, who's based in Denver, Colorado, who's our director of curriculum. And of course, we do have a joint venture in the Philippines run by Isabelita Perez. Some short notes there on shares on issue. For those of you who are not familiar with Australian listed companies, you might find the number of shares on issue a little surprising, but don't be scared by that. That's the opportunity, that's not the problem. I would be very remiss if I didn't finish with a slide which said, why invest in NeoMedia? And simply to run through the points, we've got a worldwide, stable, fully developed, integrated SaaS cloud-based technology platform. We use AWS for all our hosting, and we do that from our 4 points in Seattle, Singapore, the UK, and Sydney are our 4 points of distribution under AWS. Incredible organisation, incredibly efficient, incredible redundancy, and incredibly inexpensive. We have multiple sales channels, and most importantly, I'll dwell again on the Dell NAACP collaboration, which is now driving our US marketing sales, particularly after our original successful deployment in New York City. We have state, county, borough, district government recognition and validation from education departments right across New York and beyond in the states that I mentioned earlier. Our platform is highly affordable in terms of costs to education departments, and it's an annuity income stream. Because the platform migrates with the students, we cater each year as they move up. Importantly, we are an ethical investment because we're providing education where it's most needed. Our work with the NAACP, obviously by virtue, is education where it's most needed. It is an ethical investment. I would also say to you that we have an extremely low valuation in our market sector of a cap of under 20 million. And most importantly, we now have DTC eligibility, and our ordinary stock trades on most online platforms as KNEOF in the US. If you wish to further explore, please go to KneoMedia.com, which is the parent company, and of course you'll see NeoWorld, which is actually our product side. We have reference there to our different sites, which gives you also the contacts. I'd ask you to either contact myself or Michael Porter, who's located in New York. For any further questions, we would welcome any communications from you. And I shan't go further into a disclaimer. You don't need to do that, but I'm very happy to quit now and take any questions and answers that you may have. And I'll just switch to that now. So I'm just covering the questions now. I'll be quite candid, and I have a question that you stated you feel it tremendously undervalued. Why exactly? Lack of investor awareness or lack of investor understanding of both of those, or something else? I think that thank you, Richard. I think you've actually answered the question for me. I think it's a lack of awareness of the capability of the product and the platform and our ability to market with Dell and the NAACP across the market. So I would say it's a lack of investor understanding, and I must take that on my shoulders for not being forthcoming. Hopefully this conference and this presentation will assist that. The next question I have, does KneoMedia products support at home learning in the event schools are not open? I think we've covered that. Yes, KneoMedia does support educator-directed homeschooling. It does not support a consumer product where a parent who's not educationally trained is attempting to train their, educate or entertain their child. What it does do is we have very, very specific program, two parts. One is to provide at-home learning directed by the school and the school teacher to the student. Secondly, we have a home academy where there's a cohort of some 650,000 home educators in the US who are highly competent in understanding the curriculum and who are able to educate their kids at home as long as they have the right tools. So two parts, yes, our program does support home learning directed by the schools, and it can be they can take that from the classroom to the home without interruption. Secondly, we can deal with trained homeschoolers. We do have an academy, but I would stress we're not a consumer product. Do I have any more questions? In that case, I thank you so much for your attendance, and may you in the US, as we are in Australia, get through COVID and move forward. I'm sure we all will. It's difficult times, but again, I thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you now.